On March 27th, the University of Oregon beat Ohio State to win the very first NCAA basketball championship in Evanston, Illinois. The start of a tournament that takes the nation by storm every year. And here's the story behind this important moment in sports history today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. Now, previously we mentioned in another episode about the NAIA that they held their basketball tournament in 1937. And then there was the NIT who held their first tournament in 1938. So the NCAA was the third national tournament and the only one actually recognized by the NCAA. Now, the winners of the other tournaments were actually NCAA universities, but the concept for the actual tournament was actually pitched by Harold Olson, the coach for Ohio State, the team that lost the very first national championship. And when seeing the popularities of the NAIA and the NIT tournament, the NCAA, of course, joined in, and it was helped organized by the National Association of College Coaches, which was started to help make the game more unified throughout the country. Now, they decided to have an 8-team tournament featuring 4 teams from the East and 4 teams from the West. And during the first round, the West teams would play in San Francisco and the East teams would play in Philadelphia. Now, at the time, they invited multiple teams, but like I said earlier, there were those 2 other tournaments, and not everyone wanted to be in this tournament. So they didn't necessarily have the best teams at the time. But that being said, nothing stopped them from being in multiple tournaments. So there were teams that did both. But the teams featured in the East were Brown, Ohio State, Villanova, and Wake Forest. And on the West was Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, and Utah State. All the teams featured had a winning record, with Oregon having the best record overall at 26-5. So Ohio State was able to come out of the Eastern bracket, beating Wake Forest and Villanova, and Oregon came out of the West bracket, beating Texas and Oklahoma. Ohio State was led by their coach Harold Olson. They went 14-6 that year, beating teams such as UCLA and Michigan, but losing to the likes of Indiana, Purdue, and California. And originally, they weren't even the first team picked for the East out of the Ohio region, as Bradley was offered, but they decided to go to the NIT, and the Buckeyes were the second choice. But a good one. And Oregon, which at the time were known as the Webfoots instead of the Ducks, were led by Howard Hobson, and they were actually called the Tall Furs because they had one of the tallest lineups in the nation. But by today's standards, weren't actually that tall. They averaged over 6 foot tall, but their tallest was at 6'8", which, thinking about today's national championship teams, usually have multiple players over 6'8". But the game was held at Northwestern University, and Oregon's style of basketball was more of a fast break. Since they were taller, they could get more rebounds and blocks and get on the fast break and score more often. And they took the early lead 6-0. But Ohio State fought back to make the score 12-11. But Oregon then again took control. And at halftime, the score was 21-16. I know it sounds like a barn burner compared to today's standards, but this was more of a high-scoring affair than the average basketball game at the time. Because there were no shot clocks, plays took longer to develop. In the second half, Ohio State quickly came back with a couple of field goals, and the score was now 21-20. But then the Oregon Webfoots took over, making the next 4 baskets, extending their lead and never relinquishing, and finishing the game 46-33. After the game, the Coaches Association reported that they had a loss of over $2,000 putting the event together due to the attendance at all the games, which caused the College Coaches Association to let the NCAA take control of organizing the event and financially back the tournament in the following years, which is what helped it continue to grow. But it took many years before it would pass the NAIA and the NIT tournament for popularity and have the sole national champion for their tournaments. But it was a great start for the March Madness we know today. Thank you for listening to Daily Sports History. If you like this, please like and review wherever you're listening. We'd love to see how much you're enjoying the show, and that's a great way to do it. And come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History.